June 7th, 6:30 p.m. I am the Vice Chair, Councilor Tallman. We have Councilor Bartley and Councilor Sullivan with us on the committee. Jim Leahy may be a little late. Joe McGivern will be showing up within minutes. He's on his way back from another meeting. We have Councilor Murphy with us, Councilor Graney. I see Mike McManus, Sergeant Hart. Anthony Soto's with us, right?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Motion to take one off the table.
So moved. Item number 1 is sponsored by Councilor McGivern, that there be and hereby appropriated by transfer in the fiscal year 2021, $250,000 as follows: from public schools, other expenses, to healthcare insurance, $250,000. Mr. Soto, the school department, could you explain this order?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Tallman. As many of you are aware, I came to the council in December, and we took a look at the time what we could do in terms of identify transportation savings and transfer funding to the city, and we were able to transfer $2 million to out of our transportation budget and to the city back in December, I believe, if not January. And what we had agreed to at the time is that we would continue to monitor this budget, and if there were additional savings to be realized, that I would come back to the council. And that's what I'm doing here today, is just coming back to the council. We've done an analysis based on the number of buses we have on the road and how late we started a full in-person model, and we're comfortable with transferring the $250,000 out of the school department's transportation budget and to an account that the city identified. I can't really speak to the health insurance portion of it. What I'm speaking of is just where, how we were able to save money in transportation and move it to the city. I don't know what the city's budget is with health insurance or anything like that, but that's just where the savings were to be transferred. And I'm sure Mayor Murphy can elaborate on why the health insurance account is the one that the surplus is going to be moved to.
Okay. Any questions from anybody on the committee? Mayor Murphy or Tanya, could you answer that question about the health insurance, why there's a deficit of $250,000?
I'll let Tanya answer that, but I will say that I want to deal with one other thing, because I know the school needs, we need to get an improvement of, I believe we want to do a 1 or 2 year contract on the school busing without going out to bid, and that's going to need to be getting council approval. The theory in it, it's pretty rational. There have been people that have had to go out to bid and they're ending up paying, and Anthony, you tell me if I'm wrong, 8, 10, 12% more than they paid the year before. We've got an agreement, if I understand it correctly, that if we renew our increases somewhere between 2 and 4%, Mr. Soto?
Yeah, so I've been in communication and with a bunch of CFOs across the state, and by far this is probably the worst year to have to go out to bid for transportation services, because the companies as a whole and the industry as a whole, as everybody could imagine, took a huge hit, during the pandemic, when they publicly bid on and the small correction I would have, Mayor Murphy, is that we did go out to bid and we awarded a 3-year contract. So what we're asking the council, hoping the council will support, is just to extend the contract instead of a 3-year contract that we have, to just extend it for another 2 years. But we did go out to bid 3 years ago. 3 years ago, when we did go out to bid, we realized an increase in our rates of 13%. If we were to go out to bid this year, a lot of the transportation companies, they've lost a lot of money, and their prices are going to reflect that. So what I'm proposing is that, and it is, we've already have a solid, this company had come into the city of Holyoke. They're renting space. They're renting a lot, and we, all of their contracts and what they bid and their pricing is dependent on us going to school 180 days, A, and B, having a certain number of routes and buses on the road. That's how they're able to, calculate what the pricing per bus is going to be. They use that information. And as many of you know, this year, we didn't go 180 days. And then, for many of the year, we weren't even fully in person. So the companies did take a huge loss in that process. And if we were to go out to bid this year, I just think it would be a very bad financial decision for the city. So we're asking the city council to consider just taking the current contract that we have that went out to bid 3 years ago, extend it for another couple years, which would allow me to negotiate a nominal increase of about 3.5% to 4%, and would save the city at least $500,000. But and when I say at least $500,000, it's going to be a lot more than that because they also have a couple of sped contracts that we don't have to go out to bid with. We can negotiate a new contract term for 2 years because special ed is exempt from bidding. And then 2 years from now, what it would allow us to do is, allow all these companies to bounce back, and us to put out a really competitive bid where we'll be there's much more opportunity for competition. If we were to go out to bid right now, I can tell you right now, there would be one bidder. It would be the company that we currently have, and the price would go up at least 20 to 30%. And I think that the council taking this action, it would be, financial, would definitely benefit the city financially.
Thank you. I think that's another issue right now. We have time for that, right, Anthony?
Sure.
That before. Okay. Councilor
as long as you need.
Okay. Chairman McGivern has joined us, and we're still talking on the health insurance, the reason for the $250,000. Councilor Sullivan has his hand up. Councilor Sullivan.
Yes, through the chair to Anthony Soto. So if we've transferred 2 million out of there and now another $250,000 in the transportation budget, how much is still left in there unspent?
Give me 1 second. So our normal budget is about 8 million. So let me just do the math real quick. Do you want exact dollars, Councilor Sullivan, or?
No, just it doesn't have to be to the penny, but
Okay, so it would be just about 5.7 million. But and that I'm not saying that that's what's left. That's what was available to us to pay our transportation bills for this year. So a lot of that money has already been spent, given the amount of transportation that we have been doing all year.
Your volume kind of dropped off there on me.
I said that 5.7 is what would have been left in the total appropriation, but many of that is already spent based on just us paying our bills through March and April, and then what we're projecting for the rest of the year through the end of the school year.
All right, so you're saying there's unpaid invoices out there?
I'm saying we still have some, a month left of school, a couple weeks left of school. We've paid our bills through at least March. We're probably in the process right now of reviewing April bills and processing them. And then usually May bills will start coming in around this week or next. We'll review them and pay them. And then June bills will come at the end of the year, and we'll review those and pay those.
So it would be safe to say there's still going to be several $1 million left unspent from this fiscal year.
No. 5.7 million is what we needed to pay for the whole year. It's not what's left and available.
All right, so I'll go back to my original question. How much will still be after this $250,000 transfer, right? How much is still going to be left and available?
I will have to get that information to you. I'd have to look in our accounting system.
All right, if you could make a, get a communication to us in the next few days, that'd be good.
I can, yeah, I mean, I can do it before this meeting is over.
Okay. Thank you. That was my only question for now.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Graney.
just quickly, is there a legal issue about not going out to bid?
There's not, I worked with, I brought this issue to the city solicitor's office back in December when I realized that this was going to be a problem, and I asked what are our options here, and the option that was given to me by the city solicitor's office was to just get the council to agree to extend the contract another couple years. So we did go out to bid for that service, and normally it's a 3-year contract, and any contracts that exceed 3 years have to get city council approval. So that was the mechanism that the city solicitor's office. So we're not looking to have a new contract. We're just trying to extend the existing contract that we have. And in order to do that, since it exceeds 3 years, we need city council approval.
And the city solicitor has said that it's not a legal issue, that there's not a legal problem with that.
That was the
If
guidance.
the contract ends, generally speaking, it's a legal requirement for the city to go back out to bid on most contracts, I would think, but I don't know. I think we better make sure that there is not a legal issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you.
Doing a heck of
Chairman's
a
in the
job
house, so
in
Chairman
line.
can take
So,
over.
as I understand, and the reason I brought this up, this is time sensitive, and Anthony can correct me if I'm wrong, but the contract ends July 1st. And that's why I brought it up, because I think that you're going to see something more than likely at the 15th meeting that we need to act on in order to make sure that we live within the requirements of not going out to bid. That's why I understood it. I mean, I don't think we have our law department here, but that's why I brought it up. I just wanted to make the council aware that that is something. I mean, this $250,000, and Tanya can deal with the health insurance, which is what her recommendation was in terms of where we should transfer it and meet a specific need. But I do think we need to make sure that we're able to move next Tuesday on the 15th to whatever legal document we have to extend that contract for another 2 years without going out to bid. Looks like by all indicators, it's going to save us some money, significant money. That's the only reason I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, and I just want to add, if I may, that this was something that I had brought up many months ago, and we were working with the auditor's office and with Crystal at the time, and I think that because of the transition and with the fallout with whatever happened in the legal department, it just never got on the agenda. And so I wish that we had come sooner. It just didn't work out that way, and I apologize if it feels rushed.
Yeah, that seems like it'd be important to get that to us, but we'll have to be in another communication to the rest of the council, through the city clerk's office, I believe, so we can work on that.
Yeah, no, and that's where we'll be.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Is that
you know,
Councilor
I'm all
Brady?
for I'm all for saving the money. I don't want to throw a I don't want to throw a curveball into the concept of this idea. I just want to make sure that we're on legal grounds. That's all.
Right, well-
Certainly, I'm in favor of saving money for the city at all times. Thank you.
We'll make sure that the law department looks at this, and if it's okay to do it without another putting out the bid again. Councilor Sullivan, are you all set?
Yes, sorry. Forgot to
question?
take my
All
hand
set?
down. Forgot
Can you
to-
recognize the auditor, please?
Yeah. Okay, Tanya, can we have a reading on
Yes.
this, the health insurance, please?
Oh, for the health insurance.
Right. Why are
Um,
we $250,000 in the hole?
So we're actually not in the hole yet, but we're doing projections for the month of June, and we will be about $225,000 short in the health insurance line. That budget was cut by the mayor last year. So that's why I asked for this $250,000, because it should put us right on point to pay the last month.
The last month, also till June.
for
That'll
health
get you.
insurance. That's
Okay,
correct.
Okay, that'll get us right to the end of the year.
Correct.
Okay, and what happens to the excess money? It just goes back into the general fund or back to the school department?
No, it goes right into the general fund cash at the end of the
Okay.
year.
Okay. Thank you. Chairman McGivern, you could take over if you have any.
I'm not sure if I can, Mr. Chair, but
Okay.
I would like to say and ask a couple of questions. Thank you. I apologize to everybody. I was coming from a meeting downtown and I knew I couldn't get here right at 6:30, and I asked Councilor Tallman to start the meeting. I take it you used Councilor Murphy to start the meeting?
He has asked a couple questions. He made a comment about the school
I mean, for the purpose of voting.
voting for.
Well, Councilor Leahy's not going to be here tonight.
Oh, no, we had Councilor Bartley was here.
Okay, but looks like he's gone.
Yeah, we had a quorum. Yeah, we had a
Okay,
quorum.
so you started with a quorum. All right. I
Yeah.
guess I can hop in.
Okay.
If I could, first to the auditor, Tanya, on Councilor Tallman's question there, we understand, the surplus at the end of any fiscal year goes into the general fund, into free cash. We also know what's happened to free cash the last couple of years. Isn't that kind of a dangerous proposal here?
It could be, unless you want to leave it in the school department's budget and it will go over in their department for the next year.
Well, only if they encumber it, because they're part of the free cash game too.
They do. Yeah, they do encumber their funds moving forward.
So can we encumber these funds for health insurance, or is it better ask, Anthony to encumber them for the bus contract next year?
You can do either, but I know that we're going to need at least $225,000 to pay for our health insurance. So it'll either be done through this transfer, or I'm going to have to wait until 2022 and bring it forward as a previous year's invoice.
Anthony, what are your thoughts?
I just think that, so Councilor McGivern, you're very well versed in this whole net school spending conversation. So as you're aware, the transportation budget isn't part of net school spending. So I wouldn't be looking to encumber that money. I would be looking for that would be money that belongs to the city, unless the city is willing to fund the school department above net school spending. And we could use that for other purposes. I've been pretty clear with the council that, our funding appropriation every year is funded at the minimum, and that if there is any savings in transportation, that I'd be more than happy to pass it along to the city to help address any other issues that you have in the city, because our core budget sits within the net school spending side of things.
And Anthony, I think I can say for everyone, we appreciate that, and you've always been upfront with us, and we happily appreciate that. Speaking on net school spending, with the past year and the whole impact of COVID. Has that had an impact on net school spending?
It has had an impact on net school spending in that, I'm working with the auditor to try to, reconcile some certain things between our munis and theirs. But because we're funded at the minimum net school spending, what happens at the end of the year is that if we do have a surplus, we can encumber it without further appropriation as long as it's to meet the net school spending requirement. So whatever surplus we have this past year, we end up encumbering it, and then showing on our end of year report that it was spent, which is, there's a whole legal, ruling on districts that are funded at net school spending. But typically what happens is if, let's say we do have a surplus of $500,000 or whatever that is, we encumber that at the end of the year and we're able to appropriate it without, the legal term is without further appropriation, as long as it's to meet the net school spending requirement.
And Anthony, can I ask you on the grants that you get, are you in good position with the end of the year coming so that we don't have this outside auditor telling us that we're out of whack, even though we're not?
I mean, I'd love to, I don't understand how we would have any deficit, so I would love to work with the city auditor to resolve any that are out there. I know that there were some at year end where we, in my opinion, they weren't really deficits. They were, corrections that needed to be made. And we could provide whatever supporting documentation. I'd love to get to a point where our books align to the city's books. And we're doing all the work that we can on our end. And we need to work with the city auditor to make sure that whatever corrections need to be made are made.
It would help us a lot. And there is a grace period for corrections. Tanya, correct me if I'm wrong. There is a grace period after June 30th to make corrections, but they have to be made, she reports to DLS that there's a deficit and DLS can make a decision that they're going to take it out of our free cash. It's smoke and mirrors to me. And I don't think anyone's working with us outside of the city, which is sad, but it's something that we have to be mindful of.
Yeah. The nature of our grants is, they're reimbursable. So, in our munis system on the school department side, I know we have 2 separate licenses, but there's almost no way that we could end up in a deficit because we budget what we're getting. What happens often is because we're in 2 separate munis systems, things could get recorded on the city side. If we got a receipt or if we got an expense, things could get recorded in the wrong fund, and it throws it off. So it's very important for the city auditor's department and our office to maintain unity in terms of, to get into a process where we're regularly reconciling on a monthly basis by fund. And, I'd love to be able to get to a point where we're there. It has been a challenge.
Well, we appreciate it and we need it, because there were deficits cited in the school department last year. Yeah. And I think you're aware of what they were, and we just like to make sure, everybody agrees we're all on the same page when the time comes.
I'd love to clean it up just as much as you would, because when that comes out, I think it reflects poorly on our office as well, and that's the last thing I want. I really just want to get to a place where we're in alignment, and then moving forward, we're regularly monitoring that on a monthly basis, and that just should not happen.
Thank you.
Not happen.
Is there any other discussion on item number 1?
Make a motion to approve the transfer.
Motion made and seconded to approve the transfer. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Graney, you all set?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, just thought your light was coming on, no problem. On that motion,
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Counselor Bartley, are you with us? Okay, I'm gonna,
He was, but he dropped off again, it looks like.
okay. If he isn't back in a minute or two, can you just check with him, Jeff, to see if he's got technical difficulties or something? If not, that's fine.
Yeah, he keeps getting kicked off. He texted me a couple of times on it.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2.
Motion to take item number 2 off the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded to take item 2 off the table for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Introduced by myself that in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53, the city hereby accepts the provisions of the coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds, grant and authorize the establishment of a fund and or other method appropriate for the accepting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Off the table for discussion, representing the city. I know Mayor Murphy's here and our auditor's here. Who's going to take the lead on this one?
I can take it. I mean, Alicia, we're talking the federal monies, and Alicia certainly has been, she's going to be the lead in terms of programming. Tanya and Kate will be the leads in terms of the financial recording and auditing and things along that line. So, I mean, everything we have found out about the grants is still the same. There's a potential of local lost revenue that we are working on, trying to get a calculation. That appears by most accounts to be able to be appropriated into the general fund as a lost revenue. The rest of any other monies appear to be all criteria, according to the Treasury Department, is related to similar to community development. Same process that we use for community development. That's the same process that would be used for the Recovery Act money.
And this particular grant here, how much money is it?
It's 14.9 million each, both this year and then next June 1st, another 14.9 million. And Tanya, if I'm wrong anywhere, just chime in, okay?
You're
Tanya,
doing
you
a
with us?
wonderful job. Yes,
What's that?
he's doing a good job.
I'm sorry, but I didn't hear you.
I said he's doing a wonderful job.
All right, so is this the American Recovery money, or is this a new title, or what's going on?
We put it
This
in.
is the,
Go ahead, Tanya.
this is the American Recovery money. They just kind of labeled it a little bit differently when they sent out the guidance.
Okay, and where is the guidance on how we appropriate this?
So right now, the guidance doesn't specifically say how to appropriate it.
And why are
we
we
can
voting on
get-
this tonight if we don't know how to appropriate it?
Well, but we need to appropriate it into this fund for appropriation. So the guidance specifies that the funding must go into its own special revenue fund, and for the accounting of receipts and expenses. We have a process in place. I think that Mayor Murphy has spoke on that, about the programs and how the city would like to appropriate that, but the process has not been specified.
Okay,
Like
so we're the city council. Are we being asked how we want to see this money appropriated? Or are we being told how this money is going to be appropriated?
You're getting. Go ahead, Tanya.
Go ahead.
I'm
There
just-
you go.
Again, I'm going to say the same thing. We're being told by the federal government that with the exception of the lost revenue, it's to be handled the same as the community development process. So that, and the council will be involved in that discussion, as will citizen and public input. That's one of the criterias of the federal money. And Alicia Zeller has discussed this in many cases with the Treasury Department and HUD to try to make sure that we were all on the same page, because it was a lot of gray area. The other part, in terms of lost revenue, and I know Tanya's been working with Division of Local Services to make sure that we've got a calculated formula that is going to be accurate. That money, by I will say almost all accounts, is a potential to be brought back into the general fund and to be used in a supplemental budget if needed. But we don't know if we have any lost revenue that will be calculated. More than likely we will, but to actually have that calculation and have that approved, we haven't been able to get that yet. And the rest of the money, once we accept it, it gets used as it gets distributed via proposals, just like community development.
And Mayor Murphy, you're saying the federal government has mandated it to be done this way,
Yes.
or gave the city a choice to do it this way?
No. This is what they're saying, that this is how it's supposed to be handled.
And do we have that in writing from them?
I'm sure Alicia Zeller probably has it in writing for them.
Now, I'd like to see it.
Okay.
Mayor
And-
Murphy, your budget is over $3 million. I'm going to play a devil's advocate here, okay, Jeff?
Okay.
Your budget is over $3 million in deficit for next year. The city council is going to be looking at cutting, some or all of that out of your budget to reduce that $3 million, 3.8, I think it is. As that happens, is that considered that there's lost revenue? So none of this money can be used for that.
No, lost revenue, the calculation, like I said, it's a complicated process. The lost revenue goes back, if I'm not mistaken, Tanya, it would go back to the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2019. And there would be a comparison made as of December 31st, I think 2020, and Tanya, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the date that calculation would be made. And there's a formula that the federal government has put out, and believe me, it's a calculus formula. They take those numbers, and then you got to get verified that what you have given them indicates what that lost revenue for that year. And every December 31st, I believe for the next 3 years, and it might be 4
4
years.
years.
I think 3 years.
4 years.
4 years. Every December 31st, the city would do the same process to see if there's other lost revenue. If there's other lost revenue, we would be able to get that revenue back. But go ahead.
It's obvious there's lost revenue. We
Well,
just saw the recap sheet.
No. It's got to be, there's a whole calculation. Trust me, it's not just that we've obviously lost revenue. I'm not telling you that's not true, but there is a specific calculation that you have to do in order to get there. And with that calculation, my gut is there's probably going to be more lost revenue than you think, but we've got to get that approved by the federal government.
Okay. Are we working on that calculation?
Yes, we are.
My question.
Yeah, we're trying. Yes, we are.
So
We're trying to get a
so do we
clarification.
wait to vote on this grant until we hear that calculation is?
The reason, and Tanya, correct me again if I'm wrong, the reason this was put before you was so that we would get the federal money into our account. We can take the money into our account. This was to be able to do that. And I know Tanya was very concerned, and I think rightfully so, that make sure that because it is a grant, that we follow all the proper procedures with the city council in mind.
When we do block grant, we take a similar vote. We accept the block grant monies.
Yep.
But when we do block grant, prior to us voting on it, there is a public hearing. Prior to the public hearing, or during the public hearing, or after the public hearing, there is a review by the city council of the proposals of where the money's going to go.
And that is all going to happen.
Okay, so do we table this and wait for that to happen?
Then we don't get the money. We just keep waiting for the money to
Well,
go
this is
into our-
not block grant. This is not the block grant process. It's taken us completely out of the process.
I disagree with you, Councilman McGivern.
Well, where do we get to say our input?
All right, let me take a second back. So the same way you do when you get the community development, you get a proposal coming in, we have a hearing with DGR, this is part of this process that we have scheduled with DGR. The council would then have a vote, but prior to that, we have a citizen council. All the proposals would come in, be reviewed by the Citizens Advisory Council, have public input, go to the city council with the opportunity for the
And
DGR.
then we vote on accepting block grant money for the given year. But you're asking us to take the vote up front with a promise that that's going to happen down the road.
I'm not telling you the promise that's going to happen. I'm telling you it's going to happen.
That's a promise.
And we have a chance to take, if we accept the money, we would then put that money into an interest-bearing account. And let me just, 14.9 million, I'm going to use the stabilization fund. Stabilization with 15 million a year and a half ago made $1.1 million in interest. 14.9 million, I'm going to assume over a month or two could make $100,000, $150,000 in interest, which we are allowed to keep.
In the general fund.
It's our money as far as I know at that point. They bring it to us, we are allowed to collect interest. There's no criteria that we have to use the interest specifically under the Recovery Act. At least not to my knowledge. And all I'm asking you to do, and all Tanya is asking you to do, is accept it so that we can get the transfer of the Treasury money into an account that we control that will be processed just like the Community Development Program, and you will get the vote.
Tanya, if I could ask you a question, if the city council votes to accept this on June 15th, when will this account be established? And will it be in this fiscal year or the beginning of next fiscal year?
If you were to vote on it this fiscal year, it would be in the fund for this fiscal year. It does have its own interest-bearing account, like the mayor said, but we can draw it down from the state now to have it available for use when we go through the proper procedures for expenditure.
Which we don't know what the proper procedures are, but if we start earning interest on it this month, that
Yes.
interest will go into the general fund for this fiscal year?
Now, I'm not sure if this interest is going into, I didn't see that. I know that Katie Jakowski did check to see if we could put it in an interest-bearing account, but what I did not see is if that interest goes into the general fund or if that interest actually goes into the fund that it comes from. For example, stabilization, it does receive interest, but that is posted to the stabilization fund.
So
I can definitely check that guidance with Katie tomorrow. I don't have it with me. I know that she said it was allowable to open an interest-bearing account, but she did not specify whether that interest would be posted to the general fund or to the coronavirus relief fund.
this is a standard language. So on the part about all resources associated with the administration of said grant and setting up the accounts, for the receipts and expenses. Mayor Murphy just described something that is compared to block grant, but completely reversed. And I trust Mayor Murphy, and that's why I said it's a promise that we will be part of the process, although it looks like we won't have a say on the way this money is sent when it comes down to it being spent. But in this language, can we amend it?
Can you amend the
We can't
language?
amend, we can't amend a grant on the floor, but can we get new language that brings us into the process as Mayor Murphy described?
I mean, we can't bypass the state rules, but you
We
can
don't have the
create-
state rules because, we're just being told it's block grant, but it's not.
So if Alicia has guidance that states that this is specifically following the block grant rules, then that guidance is already out there and there would be no need for you to do anything.
Well, there is a need because, as I just said, the block grant is public hearing, citizens input, city council input, and then the city council votes on accepting the grant. Now, we're going to vote to accept this money. I think we all know that, just like we vote to accept the block grant. But we're not getting to say up front where we think the money should be spent. we're being told down the road will be asked.
If I can respectfully disagree with you, Counselor.
But you just said that.
Huh?
It's exactly what you just said.
But you're basically, you're telling me that you get up front telling community development money. The community development money, we get that from the federal government. We solicit proposals long before the council ever has any input. The council does get input, and that's exactly what I'm doing here.
But we after the proposals are solicited, after the Citizens Advisory Committee votes on it, after the mayor, the CAC, the office, and the advisory committee do their stuff, it comes to us. But we still haven't voted on accepting the money. And you're asking us to accept the money and then do that later.
All right, I'll go along with you there. But on the other hand, we're not going to not accept the money. So I'm telling you, the process is exactly the same as what we've done for community development. And I don't know what else I can tell you, Council.
Well, I understand, Mayor Murphy, but when this all starts, there's going to be someone else sitting in room one.
No, that's not true.
This is going to start.
The intention here with the schedule that we have here is to get this so that we are actually awarding things in August and having those that are ready to actually go in operation start in early September.
So when do we weigh in?
July and August. The goal is
the president aware of this?
What's that?
Is our president aware of this?
I can't tell you that. I know I published the schedule, and that's
first I'm hearing of it.
No, it's been published.
Published where? I've been asking these questions for 3 months.
Well, I haven't been there for 3 months, but since I've been there, I pretty much.
I know, but I've been asking everybody.
Made it.
Other discussion, Councilor Lacey.
Thank you. I see this issue as similar to the stabilization fund that we're being asked to create for the marijuana impact fees, where unless we create this particular fund where the money can be deposited, we would not be in compliance for any sort of appropriation or withdrawal from the fund. So I do very much see the creation of the fund and the receipt of the funds is coming first. And I am definitely, 120% in favor of having an open and public process, which is why I filed the order that we have a public process for how these funds are going to be appropriated. And I do believe that the city council should be able to make a lot of the decisions about how to appropriate these funds. I do think that given the amount of money that's before us and the timeline that we have to spend the funds, that we want to solicit a broad set of applications, as what we're calling it now, from city departments and other agencies in the city to understand what the options, like we should really understand what the full set of options are for how we could spend this money and then make our decisions from there. However, I do think that the entire process does begin with the acceptance of the funds, and in order to receive the funds, they need to be deposited into an account somewhere, and that's what this order before us is doing tonight.
Any other discussion? Any motions?
I'll make a motion to accept the provisions of the coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds grant.
Second.
Motion made and second to accept the provisions of the coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds grants to establish a fund and other methods appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all receipts associated with the administration of said grants. The motion has been made and seconded to accept that. In doing so, we would accept, and yes, we would receive $14.9 million for the first year, and then another $14.9 million for the second year. And that money can be spent with the treasurer's approval and the mayor on whatever they want. Any further discussion?
With our input.
Correct.
That's not what we're voting on.
I mean, stop the drama, Joe. Come on, we just take a
David,
vote.
don't start in my committee.
Can we take a vote? I mean,
You're out of order.
You're a drama
The
queen. Knock
vote's
it
on the
off.
floor. You start right away, and you're out of order the minute you open
No,
your mouth.
Joe, you've been editorializing the whole meeting. We're still take a vote. I mean, knock it off.
The motion on the floor is to adopt, but call it what it is. And stop making this personal, Councilor.
Stop
Barton.
the editorializing, Joe, and
Stop
it's not
making
personal.
it personal.
Get off it.
You know? Give me a break.
Fair enough.
Motion on the floor is to adopt. The language that's in front of us. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Yes.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is introduced by Councilor McGee. In order that the acting mayor consider the use of the ARP and funds towards the Holyoke Row proposal. See attached proposal. Chair will make a motion to take off the table for discussion. All
Motion
those
to
in
take off the
favor?
table.
Any
Second.
opposed? So moved.
Aye.
Is there any discussion? Is there anybody here to talk about this?
I did send an invite to somebody from Holyoke Rose. They did not respond, I don't think.
Councilor Murphy, you're familiar with this, right?
Yeah, yeah. And Councilor McGee has spoken with them, and they are aware that the process is on the city website, and they are working with both Councilor McGee and Alicia Zeller to put a proposal in so that we will be reviewed.
Any further discussion?
Make a motion to the item's been complied with.
Second.
Motion made and second. The item's been complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item
Motion to
4.
take item number 4.
Second.
Motion made and second to take item 4 off the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Introduced by Councilor McGee to invite the auditor to discuss the update of the council on the rules associated with the ARP Act. The auditor also provided council with the update as they become available and refer to finance. It's been tabled since April 15th. It was also tabled on May 10th. It was also tabled on May 27th. It's here to see if there's anything that we're getting in writing from the federal government. Do we have anything from the federal government?
I think we got some emails, I think, Joe.
I was going to say I've forwarded all of the guidance on the update in the ARP funding, and as well as the revenue replacement information and calculation to full city council.
Have we received it yet, Tanya, or is it just coming in?
I just
Received it.
Yeah, I just sent it. I think I just received it like on Friday, and I sent
Okay,
it.
so it's coming in next week on the 15th?
Yep.
All right. Any further discussion? The chair will entertain a motion that with those emails coming in, information coming in, that the order's been complied with?
Motion order's been complied with.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Motion to take item number 5 off the table for
Second.
discussion.
Motion made and second to take item number 5 off the table. That in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council hereby accept the provisions of the fiscal 2020 Commonwealth Security Trust Fund Grant, $20,000 with no match. Authorize the establishment of a fund and or other method appropriate for the accounting of receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grants. Under discussion, we have with us
Lieutenant Hart and Captain Pratt.
Thank you, John. Lieutenant Hart and Captain Pratt, soon to be Chief Pratt from the police department. John or David, do you want to run us through this?
Sure, I'll take the lead. So this is a $20,000 grant. There's no match, and all councils. If Councilor Leahy was here, he could vote on it. Basically, this is an equipment grant from the state that we're looking to get like a 6-tier clear view locker system for our tasers so that we can kind of see what's available and stuff for emergency deployments, as well as additional taser equipment to include holsters and extra cartridges that we need for training. And we're also looking to get 3 mobile street cameras that'll help us with not only traffic, but our gang and drug problems. With our current police strategies, it's often that a lot of these gang and drug places are displaced. So with these mobile cameras, we're able to kind of follow the trail of the dealing and crime. And that's about it. If you want to break down of
Please.
that, yes, the locker equipment is $2,200. The taser equipment is $9,550, and the cameras are $8,250.
Thank you, John. Is there any discussion or questions for the police department? Councilor Murphy, Mayor Murphy,
I'll defer to Councilor Tomlin as a member of the committee, and then I'll answer.
Councilor Tomlin.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Lieutenant Hart, when does this grant have to be spent? When does it start and when does it have to be spent?
It starts once it's approved. We already have it, the contract signed by the state. So once the city council approves it and a fund is established, we can go ahead and get the equipment and then invoice and send out. We hope to have it as soon as possible. Once that fund is established, we can start getting requisitions out and getting the equipment in, and hopefully within 6 months we can have the equipment here once the fund's set up.
Thank you. And on the cameras, the mobile cameras, how does that work, and what areas do you feel is they going to be moved around throughout the city at different times of the year?
Yeah, I'll let Captain Pratt talk to you about that.
Yep. Peter, what we would do with those, and we've been after these for a while too, is, as you know, we get a lot of drug activity that moves, and our city cameras currently don't cover those areas. And this would allow us to either cover an area that's not covered or enhance an area that might already be covered, but we might need another angle or two to get the whole picture. And also, we would use them for traffic purposes too, for locations where, you know, we get reports about speeding and things like that. We could use those cameras there as well.
So if there's areas of the city that the councilors may get here complaints about, areas that they're speeding or infractions of traffic infractions, we can contact the police department. They could try to move those around.
100%, and those would work in conjunction with the trailers we have currently, so it's just going to enhance everything we have.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set.
Councilor Murphy.
The cameras was my question. It's all set. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If none, Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept the provisions of the 2020 Commonwealth Security Trust Fund grant.
Second.
Motion made and second to accept the provisions of the Commonwealth Security Trust Fund grant. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Motion to take item number 6 off the table.
Second.
Motion made and second to take item number 6 off the table. This is appropriated by transfer of fiscal year 2021, $150 as follows. From Conservation Restriction Class 150 to Urban Forestry Challenge 150. Off the table, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. And Jeff, do we have Yanni? Yanni, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Is this yours, Yanni?
Yeah, it's part of
Could you
item
walk us
7.
through it?
Go ahead, Jan.
Sorry, what was the question?
The $150 transfer. It's coming from the conservation restriction class. And they're just looking for a reason why that's a surplus there for this year, and going to urban forestry challenge and what you're going to use it for.
So there was a we use the conservation restrictions cost to manage our conservation restrictions that we own on several parcels throughout the city. We were able to do certain improvements with volunteer labor this year. So there was a surplus that we're moving around. There was a lot less activity because of COVID. And the 150 is for the matching funds for the grant. That's the next item on the agenda.
Any discussion or any questions for our conservation director? And you'll, obviously, it's the end of the fiscal year, Yanni. You have no problem getting through the end of the year?
Oh, yeah.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and second to approve the transfer. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you, Yanni.
Motion to take 7 off the table.
Motion made and second to take item 7 off the table, which is also Yanni. This is in accordance with Mass General Laws 44, Section 53A. The City Council accepts the provisions of the DCR Urban Forestry Challenge Grant, which is $7,000 in-kind match, $4,846 a cash match of $150, which I guess is what we just voted on. And the grant authorizes the establishment of fund and or other method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources. Thank you, Yanni. I guess we did these backwards. But can you walk us through this grant?
Sure. So as you said, this is the DCR Urban Forestry Challenge Grant Program, which provides funding for tree planting events, planting, tree inventories, and maintenance of heritage trees. The idea for this grant arose with conversations with our DPW about moving trees from our municipal nursery, which was established about 6 or 7 years ago. We've done a good job planting most of the trees, but some of them have grown too big to move with our current equipment. So the goal of this this grant is to have a planting event at Kennedy Park in Holyoke, which is outside the DCR Greening the Gateway Cities planting zone. So it's something that's on us to do any planting there. And it's where a school used to be, I believe. And there's big open areas and it gets pretty hot in the summer. So we thought this would be a good candidate for a planting event with trees from our nursery. So the $7,000 is going to go towards paying a contractor to move some of the largest trees from our nursery to be planted here. I put together a planting plan with our city forester to figure out the best arrangement at the park. And they'll help lead planting events at a community event. Given the timing of when the grant was actually awarded, it's looking like we'll do an Arbor Day in April 2022 for this event. The in-kind match is all staff time and volunteer labor. And the only cash match is what was just approved. That'll be for printing flyers for the event and possibly putting in a newspaper ad.
And just you covered everything, Yanni, but do you have a rough idea of how many trees are going to be moved? And I'm just curious, how many trees are in the nursery?
There's about 100 trees left in the nursery. This plan, as the way we put it together, has 34 trees being planted, both within the park and within the tree belt on Allen Street. And I think one of the other cross streets, Waldo, maybe.
And this is Kennedy Park?
Yeah.
And I think a few of us, including Councilor Bartley, knows that park was named after Chick Kennedy, who was a longtime councilor. And I think the Kennedy family would be very proud of the trees going up.
That's good to hear.
Any further discussion? Councilor Tallman.
Thank you. Just a correction real quick, Joe. I missed, I had to step out for a minute. I want to make my vote clear on the item number 6. So I want to be a yes on that. And
okay.
The park, I'm very familiar with this park, a former Highland School where I spent 7 years of my early formative years, and playing, kickball out there in the big parking lot. The park was named after Edward Kennedy, who was Chick Kennedy's brother, who died in World War II. He was a paratrooper. And there is a stone there right by the wall that says Highland School. I used to stop by there because I had to cut over from Allen Street to Waldo Street on a daily basis when I was pounding the pavement, delivering the mail. David, learning from your great Uncle Billy how to deliver the mail properly. And I think it'd be a great area. I would like to talk to Yanni on the areas where they're going to put the trees, because there is a ball field there. They do play soccer there. So we want to make sure that, they're not intruding on any of the ball games or soccer fields. But I think it'd be a great area to plant some trees, Allen Street, Lincoln, Waldo, and Nonotuck. So it does get hot in there, and I think it would be a great area. So I'm all in for this grant. Thank you.
If I remember correctly, Councilor Tallman, the day they dedicated the memorial, one of our veterans went down. It was very hot that day at the park.
That's right.
Not down for the count, just down for heat exhaustion.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
I just make a quick comment, if I may.
Councilor Murphy, Mayor Murphy.
Yeah, I just want to thank Yanni. He's he's been wonderful to work with. He has visions about how to try to make things better, and I just want to compliment. He's comes in. He's thorough with his approach. He gives you a very strong rationale, and I just want to compliment him and thank you for what you've done, Yanni.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy.
Any further discussion? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the provisions of the DCR Urban Forestry Challenge Grant.
On that motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So moved.
Motion to take 8 off the table.
Second.
Motion made second to take item 8 off the table, that there be hereby is appropriate by transfer in the fiscal year 2021, $3,843 from Mayor's Aid. The total amount to the paid personnel.
That's 9, I think.
Yeah, you're correct. I'm sorry.
Well,
Item
motion to
number-
suspend, go to, you want to do number 9? What's the difference? 'Cause
All right, I read it. We can do it.
motion to suspend, take 9 off the table.
So
Second.
moved. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved. This amount is going to the pay personnel administrator. Councilor Murphy, do you want to run us through this?
Yeah, this is the amount of money that would have been needed to pay the new personnel director. And I know that she's coming before the Public Service Committee meeting on Wednesday. And I appreciate Councilor Leahy and Councilor McGee making sure that we could do that on Wednesday. And basically the $3,843, obviously I had a position open in the mayor's office and the new minimum on the personnel director, this would have provided the pay to be able to do that.
Any further discussion? Any questions
Mr.
of Mayor
Chairman?
Murphy?
Mr. Chairman?
Councilor Graney.
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to bring it to your attention that there's a block on channel 15, a remote PC image that's covering the screen, almost covering the entire screen.
Thank you.
I'll reach out to Scott.
Thank you. Is the audio good, Councilor Graney? I gotta,
Yes, it is. The audio is fine.
okay.
It's just that there's a blockage on the screen with this remote PC image.
I know, I see it now. Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
Motion made second to approve the transfer. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
All right,
Any opposed?
Aye.
So moved.
motion to take 8 off the table.
Second.
Motion made and seconded now to take 8 off the table. This is there be a transfer hereby appropriated in fiscal year 2021 of $50,000 from the power shovel operator to claims and damages. On that motion, all those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
So moved. Claims and damages, Jeff, I believe is the law department, but with us is, or I'm not sure, maybe, but Mike McManus to explain this. Mike, welcome.
Thank you. So the claims and damages is in the law department. This is to pay a settlement for a former DPW employee. That's why the money is coming from one of DPW's line items, the power shovel operator.
And the reasons it's surplus?
Well, there's positions that have been vacant for a period of time this fiscal year, or with people out on workers' comp. And with the way DPW is, if someone's out on comp, they get paid out of personal workers' comp line item. DPW doesn't have the same kind of injured on duty that police and fire do.
Mike, how much of the settlement can you get into detail without violating any
I have
personnel rule? Or
I have no idea.
Okay. And the settlement is 50,000?
The settlement is 50,000. That's the complete value of the settlement. It would be with that settlement, this employee would be paid and no longer in a relationship with the city.
Mayor Murphy, was this under your watch or prior?
No, that's under mine. And what Mr. McMahon just said is true. That this is the final settlement. It closes it out, and we've been. It's recommended by the law department and the auditor that this is the way to go.
Okay, and only the mayor can sign off on a final settlement, but the corporation is the city council. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer.
Second.
Motion made second to adopt, approve the transfer, and recommend that to the full city council. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. 4-0.
Motion to take item number 10 off the table.
Second.
Motion made second to take item 10 off the table. On that motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Introduced by Councilor Murphy, that the order that the city considers purchasing any replacement vehicles to reach out to the state to see if they could be eligible for significant rebates off the purchase price of electric vehicles. The More-EV program offers rebates to the private as well as public entities for purchasing electric vehicles, now including trucks. In addition, that the city look into the Mass General Green Communities Grant Program, which provides funding to assist with the installation of EV charging infrastructure. We had this on the table we tabled it back in May 10th, and we brought it back up tonight to see if there's a report available. Councilor Mayor Murphy or Mike McManus?
I mean, right now, I'm still working, and as I understood it, a lot of the state funding for the past fiscal year has run out, but they are planning on putting additional funding in for next year, and I would hope that we try to get ourselves in line for that. I know, without mentioning a company, I know there are businesses that are looking also to work on getting some of these grants, so I'm trying to see if I can work both publicly and with private entities that are trying to create these charging stations, which if we don't improve the charge, or if we don't establish, never mind improve, if we don't establish effective charging stations, the rest of it's probably going to be a moot point. But we've talked about, and I haven't actually talked to Mr. McManus yet about it, but the idea of where we fuel up now, potentially having charging stations for our public city vehicles, and then also having charging stations throughout the community that would be, and they need to be there, and I cannot think of the proper word, but they're superchargers, if you will, that make it much quicker than the standard chargers. Sometimes now are 45 minutes to an hour to get a charge. So obviously, if you're looking to go somewhere, you're not going to wait an hour to get your vehicle charged. And the superchargers, and that's definitely not the correct terminology, but they've gotten up to the point where like they're 15, 18 minutes, and they're making them better and better as we go along. So I'm just, at some point, obviously, electric vehicles are becoming more and more prevalent. I just want the city to be in a position to get as much of the funding that's available. Because of the green community situation, we have extra potential in terms of getting awarded. So I want to make sure we're in the pot. I talked to Mr. Lavelle at the Gas and Electric. He's working to try to see if he can put something together. Obviously, from the vehicle perspective, it would be, DPW, police, fire. I've talked to a few just in terms of as we move down the road, these are things to consider, but we couldn't do them unless we're able to get the charging stations. So it's a combination, not only vehicles, but the charging stations got to be part of that process, or we'll have vehicles and they'd be off service because they can't get charged in any quick time. So that's the goal, is to potentially start to move us into the electric vehicle world, but also to make sure we have the capacity to do that efficiently. And if you wouldn't mind, I would just say I would say keep this on the table as a fresh reminder. I am still trying to work with in terms of how we're actually going to coordinate the request for the money. And right now, my gut is much of the charging will go through the gas and electric. And then the vehicle may go through purchasing. But we're still working on that.
Fine. Before we make that motion, Mike McManus, Mike, did you want to weigh in? Or you just?
I think Mayor Murphy did a fantastic job of summarizing where things are right now.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion, or should we just let Councilor Barley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just through the chair to Acting Mayor Councilor Murphy. Where are you looking for resources, Terry, for this?
It's all state. There's state funds, both that MOR EV program plus the Green Community Program, and they each offer different solutions, I guess I'll say, that they would be willing to fund. And I've just been told, and that as we looked at it, that we needed to look into fiscal 22 because fiscal 21 had been awarded. So, and that's why I'm looking at trying to see if I can get something started in July to try to get ourselves in the queue. But okay. It's state environmental, and there's 2 or 3 different agencies that have different kind of grants, as I understand it from the state, that would be willing or that have offered outright grants to do this. And in other cases, I think there's rebates that would come out for it.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that your successor is not going to follow up on this. So who's a department head? Who's a department head that's going to be sort of taking a lead on it?
It would be right now. It would be Mr. Lavelle for the chargers. He may also be the one to, we truck, because they also are looking at getting some electric vehicles for them. So he may be all together, but also I would be going through purchasing as well to make sure that we're doing that correctly. And then we'd work with superintendent, we'd work with the water department, we'd work with all the people all the departments looking to buy vehicles that, let's get a proposal together. Let's say if we can get it. But again, the key to me is we have to be able to get the charging stations. And that's the first grant I would want is let's get charging stations that we can make sure that once we're there, we get the electric vehicles, we can make sure that we're not inefficient. And I know that was one of the concerns when I first brought this up, that, well, if we do it, that means the vehicle is going to be out of service for an hour and a half. And obviously we can't afford that.
So the COVID funds are not eligible?
Not to my knowledge. These are, you would are you talking about the recovery money or?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, the recovery money. Yeah.
That's a possibility, and that's something we're looking at. But we think that we might be able to get enough in this to cover us, and not use the other money for other things. But it is a possibility, and I know Mr. Lavelle is looking at that and other things.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Chair will entertain a motion to lay on the table.
Table. Yep.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Motion to take item number 11.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to take item 11, introduced by Councilor Murphy, off the table, that the Finance Committee meet with the Auditor and the Director of Planning and Development to discuss the potential problems and benefits of the community host agreements. On that motion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Aye. We have Aaron Vega with us, and of course, Mayor Murphy. Aaron, welcome.
You drove him out.
He's getting ready.
There it is.
Good evening. Sorry.
Councilor Murphy, would you like to
Good to see
lead us
everybody.
into this? And Aaron, welcome.
Aaron.
So I filed this because I think we really need to get some clarity in terms of both the potential to be able to use community host agreements correctly and also I know we're talking about establishing, I believe, a stabilization fund for them, but then how do we spend those funds and what is eligible to be spent? So I'm trying to clarify that. And there's been I've been approached to consider whether or not the benefits outweigh the problems. And I know there's been some cases, I believe in the eastern part of the state, and I know Mr. Vega is familiar with them, where host agreements have been challenged legally. And I'm not quite sure what the final outcome on that is. So I think it's a discussion we need to have. I think we originally did them and it was kind of like, okay, we're going to get this money and we're going to be able to do things, but it doesn't appear that's really what we are allowed to do. So I'm just trying to get a full discussion on it, an understanding of what we can and can't do, how much it's impacting. I know some of our, I'll say smaller cannabis operators have indicated they think they're at a disadvantage from other communities that are withdrawing their community host agreements. So that's really a discussion I'd like to get so we all have a clear understanding. I don't have a final direction which way I wanted to go, but I think it's worth a discussion.
And Aaron, would you like to weigh in?
Sure. Yeah. So good evening. Good to see everybody. Yeah, good discussion. I guess I would say, that there's nothing incorrect that we're doing with host community agreements. So I want to make sure that there's not a context that we're doing something wrong with them. And it was great to meet with Mayor Murphy. We did meet with one business owner locally who has voiced concerns regarding the impact fee. So this is on top of the excise tax, the property tax, etc. This is the part of the host community agreement that the state allows the municipality to get a 3% fee on top of and in regards to their sales. So kind of similar to, if you will, to the room tax in ways, right? So, or the TNC funds or different things where the municipality gets a chunk. Of course, this is not as clean as some of those other ones because there is guidelines as to how these funds can be used. And I would say that state guidelines on how these funds can be used have been slowly evolving over the last 3 years. So part of the discussion that Councilor / Mayor Murphy is regarding maybe also talked about tomorrow night in ordinance where we're talking about setting up the actual fund itself. So it was agreed upon prior to me that and it made sense at the time to sort of have a level playing field, if you will. So all industry standard for the city would be the same, right? It was dictated where it would be by the city council as far as IG, the special permit process, and then the host community agreement, which of course starts the whole process for licensing. And it just was to level the playing field. Some municipalities, the first court cases, of course, were about companies suing cities because they were basically using the host community agreement for extortion, if you will, right? I mean, asking them to do much above and beyond things beyond 3%. And besides, there are already standards that they had to do to their licensing agreements. And so we just said, let's level the playing field. Let's take a 3% across the board, no favoritism, no differences. So, now in hindsight, or not even hindsight, I mean, we're in the middle of it really. I mean, so it's still evolving obviously as where we are today. I would say one of the things that I would consider would be looking at the fee when it comes to social equity license holders and economic empowerment license holders. That's a special designation for licensees. And so one could consider those to be lessened. I will say that when we look at the 2 types of delivery that was recently allowed in the ordinance, when you talk about the courier model, our current host community agreement on the courier model has a 0.05% host community agreement impact fee. So we're not looking to, really hurt those small, tiny micro businesses in any way. So I think the fees definitely can be discussed. My understanding is that it's the mayor's purview that could change that. So it's not, not dictated by ordinance, but of course we have to get a legal opinion to make sure, the process for changing it. I suggest, again, reducing for social equity and social equity, economic empowerment license holders. Sorry, lots of different acronyms to remember. And so as far as how the funds can be used, Tomorrow night, the order that was put forward addresses a process to utilize those funds if adopted by the city council. We look at it's to have both the impact and the support of this industry. So the things that have come up, and there's been discussions, preliminary discussions with Tanya, obviously from the auditor, our DPW, about parent director, so planning, Jeff Burkott, et cetera, John Dijak. We'd like to use this for infrastructure in the IG district. We know that a lot of these companies are coming to areas that have not seen infrastructure improvements, sidewalk, handicap accessibility, are in places that there hasn't traditionally been foot traffic, if you will. So the idea that we could support some of the impact that is happening from these industries setting up in these areas could be utilized. We've also talked about the social equity aspect of it, and the idea similar to what was done with the gaming money that Holyoke received from being a budding community to MGM, setting up a fund that would allow people from Holyoke to enroll in the Holyoke Community College cannabis education classes to get jobs in this industry. So there are both a non-credit and a for-credit side at HCC in the Holyoke Cannabis Education Center. So that would allow our residents to get into this industry. Places like Trulieve that are coming online in the next couple of months, as Councilor Sullivan knows, massive investment down there in that area, looking to hire and employ 300 people by the end of the year. So this is not, this is a good number of people that are going to be looking for work and need a little bit of training to be prepared for these jobs. And then the last part would be the possibility of compensation or creating a position internally in the city that could support this industry, be it a liaison type that could support this industry, navigating the system both locally and at the state level. So those are some of the general ideas, and those have been accepted by the CCC. I'll do 2 more comments and then I'll stop talking. The Cannabis Control Commission, the CCC, is currently, as well as the legislature, looking at different guidelines and oversight that the CCC would have on host community agreements. Right now, they don't tend to have much oversight on them. But now the new guidelines have been put forward, and talking with some of the newer members, this is definitely something that they want to make sure that the cities are utilizing these funds in ways. Preliminarily, I've shared our ideas with the CCC, and they think that our ideas are good, that the infrastructure, the supporting people to get into the industry, which is also a charge that the businesses themselves have to create a social equity program to have pathways for people to enter. They thought that was a good idea. And again, supporting the massive amounts of hours that both the planning department, the police department, the fire department, the building commissioner, so many of these offices, including the tax collector, auditor, assessor, put into supporting this industry. So those are kind of the large buckets. The last thing I guess I'll say, and then obviously sort of try to draw questions that this will raise, is that the timeline of our host community agreements are 5 years. And as currently written in the host community agreement, and again, predates me, and the time starts when the host community agreement was signed. So the 5-year clock ticks. The intention of the host community agreement from the state level, and I'm sure the CCC will be definitely putting out regulations and guidelines on this, is that when we renew the host community agreement, the intention is not to continue the impact fee. So the impact fee would be for 5 years, that first host community agreement. And again, the clock has already started. So for many of the companies that have gotten host community agreements, but are still in either the phase of getting their licenses and or fundraising, or fundraising, I guess is more of a political term, getting their capital to invest into their company, they, that time has already started. So for instance, our dispensaries in town are already 3 years into their host community agreement. So there's only 2 years, even I think a little bit less left for like Canna Provisions and Boston Bud. I'm not sure about Holyoke Cannabis. So hopefully that's some context, and happy to have the discussion.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you as always. Very informative and thorough. Is there any discussion? Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, so a question for Aaron. Am I to understand then at the end of the 5 years, the 3% goes away automatically? It will not be renewed? There's no option for the city?
No, I would say that's still that's a great way. Yeah, there's still that's the intent, and that is not well written. So I'm thinking that in the next year, the CCC will be addressing that, because everyone's sort of in the same boat that we're in, that same basic time frame, right? So 2016 stuff basically came online. So some of them have been renewed. I will say that we did renew with GTI and have continued the 3%. So currently, and they were agreeable to it. I will also say that there's definitely a different opinion, if you will, from the manufacturing side versus the retail side. And again, I agree that 3% more is 3% more in the taxes, and they are passing that on to the consumer. So they are maybe at an economic disadvantage. So no, it's not written per se, Councilor. You're right. So the city could have an option. I just think that given the court cases that started with the first round of host community agreements, you will probably see more of them. And again, depending on how other cities spend their money, you could see a lot more debate on these as we go forward.
All right, so basically we don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, part of me, part of this is like, in many ways, the fund that we're going to talk about tomorrow night, should have been set up 2 years ago. But as Tanya will tell you, if you did set it up 2 years ago and made a revolving fund, you would have gotten guidelines this last year that said to make it a stabilization fund. So those guidelines, so yes, so very true. New industry.
Awesome.
And I will say, I'll just throw one other thing out there too, that, in my conversation with some of the CCC staff, lawyer types, and government relations, they are willing to, they've been willing to have a meeting with my staff, and I would be welcome to work with you either through GGR, which might make more sense, or than finance, but to have a conversation with them as well. So I could bring their government relations person, outreach coordinator to the table, and we could set up a meeting with that, if that's something you would be interested in.
Is there any further discussion? I'll defer, Aaron, Councilor Bartley first.
Yeah, I guess I have well, to answer your question, Aaron, yeah, I sure, if you want to bring somebody in, if you want to send a communication and with the purpose of having a discussion, and feel free to file it as a communication, or we'll file it as an order, and we'll figure it out. We're kind of running out of time now, but I guess the question you raise is, are we going to do this through the mayor's office, or are we going to do it through ordinance? So what's where is this? I know it's in committee tomorrow night, but I guess my position would be to do it through ordinance. But what's the mayor say?
Let me just make one quick comment. So the question about how to use the funds and spend the funds is not pressing as much as setting the fund up. Because even if we set the fund up before the end of June, and if it were to pass committee tomorrow and pass the full council at the last meeting, we can't get any funds into it till next fiscal year. So how we use the funds and being in compliance with our host community agreements, we definitely have time as far as that part of it. Yeah, and I'd have to double check again. We can further up, like, I think that setting, a difference between the different kind of licenses may make sense. Manufacturing versus retail, social equity versus non may make sense. But again, I don't think it's in our ordinances at the current point.
And I guess for now, if that's the case, does anyone, maybe the auditor has a sense of what has the city collected to date on? Do we have any kind of a?
Tanya, go ahead.
We've collected $1.5 million.
That was for 2020.
This year. Yeah, just this 2021.
And that's the community impact fee, Tanya?
That's the host agreement, yes, community impact.
The host agreement fee. Okay. All right, and for right now, Tanya, that just is held where? It goes into a general fund?
Correct.
So it's been expensed?
Well, the revenue has gone into the general fund to fund appropriations. Yes.
Okay, so it's been expensed, right? Okay. All right. Okay, thanks.
Councilor Murphy, do you have any thoughts about your order?
Yeah, just, again, I filed it. I've got businesses that have, and I know they've approached Mr. Vega as well, that, they think I'm paying an impact fee. What impact have I had? And how do you score that is my impact? And some of the suggestions were that if I'm having an impact, it should be right around where my business is, and maybe that's infrastructure improvements that are made there, because obviously if I'm bringing traffic, maybe that's creating some other issue. But I mean, I'm just trying to get clarity and from what I understand with the stabilization fund and other things, we need to be a little bit more specific in terms of what we do and how it relates to the fee. And so I filed it at suggestion of one of the businesses, also in terms of trying to maintain being competitive, and staying in business. So those were two of the concerns, but I just want to make sure whatever we do, we're doing it right, that we're not appropriating money to do something that at somewhere down the line can be ruled an invalid expenditure, and then we've got to repay it and or have a lawsuit about it. So I'm just trying to make sure whatever we do, and if it was by ordinance, I'm fine with that. Obviously, whoever is going to be here in 5 months may have a different opinion, but I'm fine with it by ordinance. I just want to make sure that whatever we do, we're covering all our bases. We're making sure we promote business as good as we can, that whatever impacts that we have, we designate them so it's clear this is something we think was an impact that this business had, so that we're, again, in providing accountability for what we're expending versus an impact. So that's really, and Mr. Vega made a very good explanation of all the things that are going on. And I know Tanya's been working to get the stabilization fund set. I still think there's more discussion related to this issue to come up with, and obviously the state also agrees, in terms of coming up with what is going to be a final plan for how we do these things and how we spend these monies, or if we still collect these monies.
I think it's a good order. Point well taken. Thankful to you and thankful to Mr. Vega, because I learned a number of things this evening. I guess the question is, for this committee at this point, is the order complied with, knowing that the ordinance committee is working on the possibility of doing what we're talking about by ordinance, and knowing that we could have a future down the road communication to have another discussion about, where the money's going. There's a lot of ways to talk to the business owner about, impact. Is it just the immediate neighborhood, or is it everybody coming to a business, getting off of 91 or 391 and coming down to a business? There's a lot of ways to look at it. But I think for the purpose of this committee, do you think we're complied with?
I'll defer to Mr. Vega.
Well, I would just add two quick things, just so people know. So the Haverhill case that did go to trial by one of the dispensaries against the city was dismissed by the judge. The judge ruled that the host community agreement should be honored. Basically, it was a contract between businesses and the city, and so they signed on the dotted line. Was basically the sort of short of it, and so that agreement is still in place in Haverhill, and so there hasn't been any other lawsuits that's come to trial. And then the last thing I would say is that Joe, you were just saying the part. I made my note. I can't read my own chicken scratches. The Haverhill case, the CCC. I guess that's it. Sorry.
I would say it's complied with. I know Northampton is either eliminating or reducing their impact fee, and that was one of the things that sparked it, because obviously our businesses are somewhat competing, and that brought into discussion. And I was asked just to get the discussion going, and I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just thinking we got to make sure that we take all the factors into consideration. And if at some point the impact fee needs to be more defined, we got to make sure we can define it.
I know Councilor Murphy Sullivan just raised his hand. I saw Jeff's little picture reminded me. I will send Jeff. The city clerk has it because she's had to send it out. We did a a statement on the impact, a general statement on the impact that the industry has in Holyoke. And it was used for a couple of renewals, provisional renewals. So that has gone out both to GTI and a couple of provisional renewals. It's just a general impact, talks about the impact to the city generally and the ideas for the impact fund. So I will send that to Jeff so you have it as a communication.
Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, I just would like to editorialize, which I don't do that often, but as far as our competitiveness with the local communities, I really don't think that's a factor. It's a nice argument that any business would like to present, but on a $40 sale at 3%, you're talking $1.20. I really doubt somebody's going to leave Holyoke and drive all the way to Northampton or East Hampton or somewhere else to save $1.20. The same on the delivery side. If other companies are delivering into Holyoke from these outside communities and are eliminating something there, makes us less not eliminating it makes us less competitive. That's wasted in gas just going over the mountain. So I wouldn't be in favor of any of that. And I think the whole terminology of an impact fee, I think that's what, we're overemphasizing that quite a bit. We have local meals tax. We have local tax on other things. And I think this should be just viewed as such. It's just another local tax. So that's my editorial on. I'm done.
Any further discussion? It sounds like the motion would be appropriate, that the order's been complied with, and we can report to the full city council what we heard this evening. Is there a second to that?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Before we adjourn, just a little housekeeping. In all likelihood, this is our last meeting for fiscal year 2021. Obviously, for the next 2 weeks, we'll continue with the budget. In all likelihood, there may be a few last minute, only I hope a few transfers for the 15th, but they will have to be acted on one way or the other on the 15th. And I hope that there aren't many, but I'll leave that up to the auditor, the mayor, and the department heads. And I'd just like to thank everyone for this fiscal year. This committee worked very hard. We kept up with everything on an almost turnover basis of 2 weeks. And I think that's important for finance. It's never easy, and it certainly brings up emotions. To Councilor Bartley tonight, I disagree with you calling my comments editorializing, but I apologize for the way I handled it because I could have handled it better. I was pontificating, but on my pontificating, I will explain next week at the full city council, is about the federal government, not about how we're doing it locally, but the way the federal government is responding to this money coming in for COVID.
Oh, you're not a pontificator. You're a slave driver. These meetings have been too much.
Well, I've gone to a few of those DGR meetings too, and
I agree. They're out of control sometimes. I'm not going to deny that.
Hey,
but I got to go.
That's 2 hours.
Have a good night.
Thank you all for your
Good
hard
night,
work.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Motion
Motion
adjourned.
to adjourn. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? We do stand adjourned. See you next Tuesday.
Have a good night.